All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
We want to welcome you to this evening's meeting. We're going to be talking about what do you do when you feel like a homeschool failure. That's encouraging,
You
right?
know what? Though we
But
all feel that way
uh-huh.
all the
Well,
time.
well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like you're going through the store, and that nice lady behind the cash register looks down at your 8-year-old and says, "What grade are you in, sweetie?" And they look up at you just as blank.
I don't know.
Yeah, or the pediatrician asks them, "Well, do you like to read?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know." I think they just finished reading The Lord of the Rings for the second time,
I know,
but they
right?
can't, and
Well, how you laugh. But
this is real.
we've been homeschooling over 25 years.
Yeah,
And it happened to me the other day.
did it.
I was with a child of ours who is in that preteen space cadet age,
Mm-hmm.
and someone asked this child what grade they were in, and they went, uh fifth, seventh, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked, well, what do you like about homeschooling?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
And, but, so we all deal with that.
and yeah,
But it's
yeah.
more than that because we also all have those times that we feel like maybe we're doing our kids an injustice by homeschooling.
We just think we're not doing enough. We're not doing nearly as much as I planned, and I don't know if I'm doing the right things or if we're doing it to the depth that we should, or maybe we need to broaden it out, or am I even qualified to do this? Yeah.
And, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it gets really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I will confess. Okay, so y'all, our guest bathroom is where all the magazines go to live because no one has time to read magazines unless the door is shut and nobody else can get in there.
Okay.
There have been times I have hidden the homeschool magazines at the bottom of the stack so I didn't have to look at them.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And
Okay.
folks, we have been homeschooling for over 25 years. We have 5 graduates about to graduate the sixth. They've all gone to college. They've all been successful in life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still times I think, I'm just not doing enough. I'm not doing what I ought to. This whole week has been a failure. In fact, this actual week,
Mm-hmm.
has been one of those weeks for me because we've got a house full of kids with the flu.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is getting any schoolwork done, and I'm in a panic because we start traveling to speak in a few weeks, Hal. And they
Yeah.
need to get this stuff done before we get on the road.
Yeah. The struggle is
I can't
real.
make them get well, though.
No, you can't. The struggle is real. Um, I think part of it is when I was in industry, we used to refer to this as the imposter syndrome. That you might be fully qualified and doing everything you're supposed to, but you still feel like it's not enough. And
Yes.
like sooner or later,
Sooner or later, somebody's going to find out.
somebody's going to find out, and they'll point a finger and say, you know what I'm talking about. And you say, yes, you're right, and you just give up.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy because that's not what this is about. I mean, this whole exercise in home education is not about scoring points or
No.
beating out your neighbor or meeting up with everybody else's expectations.
No, and that I think is the critical thing to remember
Mm-hmm.
is what's the goal here?
Mm-hmm.
We want to prepare our kids for life, but honestly, the thing that will matter the most to you
Mm-hmm.
when your kids leave home is what kind of relationship they'll have with you and with God. And that's what you'll really care about when they leave home. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what should be most important to us? Well, discipleship and relationship and the things that will make them successful in life.
Mm-hmm.
Worksheets is not it. It took me a long time to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
But here's okay, spoiler alert.
Mm-hmm.
No one will ever ask to see their fifth grade math work.
No.
No, never, never. And do they need to learn math in the fifth grade? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do they need to do every problem? No. And that
Well,
was really hard for me, Hal. I
yeah.
am a type A plus personality.
Yeah, and I think we need to say up front, because some of the advice we give, people will get the wrong impression, but we need to say up front, we are very much interested in academics. We're very much interested in phonics and right spelling and proper grammar and advanced math and science and all the rest of
Yeah,
we're all of that's important.
we're really academic fanatics. All of our kids have gone to college. They've all been
Hmm.
offered academic scholarships. They've studied at some of the foremost universities in the world. But it was very hard for me to realize that the things that make them able to succeed in that were not getting every lesson done, doing every problem, filling out all the worksheets, doing all the stuff written work. That was a surprise to me.
Or trying to do 6 formal courses with your 7-year-old.
You know, the things that really matter for
Hmm.
success academically later? Two things.
What?
Well, I guess three.
Hmm.
Do they have the basic tools of learning? I mean,
Hmm.
can they read, write, do arithmetic? They
Okay.
have the basic tools of learning.
Hmm.
Do they love to learn?
Right.
Because if they love to learn, they'll teach themselves.
Hmm.
And do they have the character to work hard?
That, and I'll tell you what, that's what we see, the experience of our young folks when they've gone off to college and they're sitting in the classrooms and they're interacting in the dormitories with other students, and you start to realize the difference between the way that our kids ended up and the way a lot of their classmates ended up. And it comes down, in most cases at that level, it's the character issue.
It really
Because
is.
they wouldn't go to college if they couldn't read,
Right,
you
right.
know?
They've got the basic tools of learning, they're not going to get in.
Right. But it's when they get there and they have to manage themselves, they have to
They
get
have
up in
to
the morning,
suck it up and do the work instead of go out and play.
they have to admit, hey, I don't understand. Can you explain that a different way for me? They have to be willing to admit that they don't know everything when they arrive on campus.
Okay, plot twist.
Plot twist.
Doing many, doing tons and tons of worksheets is not really how they learn that character. They learn
No.
that because they learn burnout that way. The way they
Yeah.
learn that character is by doing chores,
Hmm.
working around the house,
Hmm.
and working alongside mom and dad, learning the value of work and seeing it. They need to see the connection between work and life
Hmm.
because the doing endless worksheets
Hmm.
and making sure every last one is done seems like you're just checking off boxes.
And unfortunately, I think that's really what it is. But in most cases, I think because if you were the one teacher in charge of a room with 25 fourth graders, and somebody said, you need to be able to tell me at the end of each week how your class is doing, you'd want to be able to check off a bunch of boxes. You'd want to be able to do something that's very quick for you to grade, that'll keep them quiet in their seats, that doesn't require a lot of hands-on time with you, or at least most of the class doesn't need the hands-on time.
And so you have them write it all out.
Right.
But you can do it just as easily by saying, hey, tell me what you learned in this chapter, honey. No
Well,
stress,
right.
no anxiety, no spending an hour and a half trying out of them. So, okay.
Okay. So,
So maybe our what's stressing us out isn't stuff that really absolutely has to be done. But sometimes we're stressed out because we're not getting schoolwork done. We're not making any progress and we're looking around and feeling like failures because it's just not happening. What do you do if you get in that shape?
well, okay. First off, is that real?
Lots of times it's not. Like this week, I can't merciful or kind for me to make kids with the flu try to do school.
Okay.
Okay. And they would have the flu no matter what school they were in. And we would be struggling to get, they wouldn't be getting anything no matter who was their teacher. So
Right.
sometimes it's not real.
So you can give your students grace and give yourself grace.
That's the
I-
hardest part.
Yeah, in those kind of situations, because you can make it up next week when they're feeling better.
And nobody cares.
Right.
You know, how when our school year ends.
Exactly.
Sometimes maybe I've been avoiding it. Maybe I've got too much on my mind. Maybe I'm anxious because of what's happening in the world and
Hmm.
I'm not paying attention to it. In which
Okay.
case, you can stew about it and you can worry about the past, or you can say, okay, today is February 23rd. This is where the ball lies. What do we do
Hmm.
at this point?
Hmm.
And you trim out all the fat in the curriculum and you figure
Right.
out what it's important that we actually get done and you start doing it tomorrow. Because and you trust that God will show you grace because we serve the Lord
Hmm.
who restores the years the locusts have eaten.
Hmm.
And the truth of the matter is that our kids are going to see this stuff again and again. They're going to see verbs again. They're going to see nouns again. They're going to see multiplication division again. We don't
Hmm.
need to beat ourselves up because we had a bad week or a
Right.
bad month or a bad year because guess what? The entire world had a bad year. The entire world.
Honestly.
Your kids aren't falling behind because the entire world is in this shape.
Well, you consider that when uh, when they shut down the schools and tell everybody, well, you've just got to learn at home. Okay, what have we been doing for the past 25 years?
Well, and
You
and
know?
our kids
Hmm.
actually, we fared better than a lot of people who've never had to deal with that.
Right. And part of that is because we're homeschoolers, we have a way of doing this, we have materials, we're used to thinking about it, etc. And another part of it is when you bring your children home, the buck stops there. And if you've got issues with behavior and with attitudes and with character development,
You can't
you
escape from
can't
those issues for
you
8 or 10 hours a
you
day.
don't put them on the bus and let somebody else take care of it. You've got to take care of it. And
Yeah,
so I
which
think
is a good thing, which
that
is really a good thing because it
honestly it is.
forces you to work through those issues,
Right.
forces you to work through the relationship. It's good.
Well, and that's something that we've learned, as we've graduated our kids. We look back and think, you know what? They all learned to read. They all learned a level of math appropriate for where they were going. They all got into college if that was their goal. But the thing that we look back with the most fondness is the character that developed. And that character developed in the days when we didn't get a lot of schoolwork done. When
Yeah.
there were fights, when there were meltdowns, when there were things that had to be dealt with right now, you know what? That's where we really built the men and the women that they became.
It's so true. And that was really hard for me because those were days I felt like a homeschool failure. The days that we didn't get any schoolwork done because we were working on character all day.
Mhm.
And yet, now that they're adults, I see those were very important days.
And that's not something you can put on your lesson plan. It happens. The
Yeah.
teachable moments, that's the teachable moment.
The teachable day. Yeah, the
And we
teacher
all learn in
we
those
all
teachable moments.
do.
Right.
And so you're sitting here, you're feeling like my
Hmm.
kids are falling behind. I'm a homeschool failure. We're not doing what we want to do. And
Hmm.
first of all, I want to say you're not alone. Everybody feels that way.
No.
In fact, right now, pretty much everybody in the world feels that way.
Right.
But then let's talk about practical things to do from here.
Okay.
First of all, you need to figure out what you have left to do. What do you need to finish so that you can feel like we finished this year?
Hmm.
And that means you're going to cut out all the busy work.
Well, there was a program some years ago, and I'm not saying yes or no about it, but the slogan was "No Child Left Behind." And you know what? That's what we have the opportunity to do as homeschoolers. That we have, if we've got a child that's having a problem, you work with that problem. But if they've got it, you don't hold them
You move
back.
on.
You move on. You don't spend time rehearsing it if they already understand it, right?
And there will be time to do rote memory work, to do rote practice and doing the problems again and again later.
Right.
So right now,
Hmm.
let's get it into them. That may mean that you sit down and you look at 5 math lessons and you say,
Hmm.
or 3 math lessons, and you say, okay, let's talk about this concept. Do you understand that?
Hmm.
You do already. Great. Then let's go to the next one.
Hmm.
And you find out what they actually need to know, you teach it to them, and you do enough practice that they've got it.
Hmm.
And that's really, really, really hard to do because it's hard to make yourself believe that that's okay. But we're all kind of the whole world in a ditch right now.
Yeah, and you know what? Ask yourself, what is your goal? Is your goal that you did all 25 pages, or is your goal that your child understood the concept that those 25 pages were supposed to explain?
Well, I wanted everything perfect, Hal. I wanted all of it done beautifully,
Mm-hmm.
neatly, so that I had it to show somebody if somebody ever asked me. But I think we're actually at like 28 or 29 years of homeschooling now. Nobody ever asked me. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes your kids need hope that they can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say, all right, honey, come here. Sit down beside me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you solve the problems. And you work through it with them. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they don't really believe they can do it in a reasonable length of time. Like somebody asked here, what do you say when kids are capable of doing the lesson but are just doing it slower than recommended by the curriculum? First of all, if they're preteens, their brains are undergoing some remodeling, and that may be what's going on, and they're really struggling, and
Mm-hmm.
that's normal.
Right.
It may be that they've lost hope, which a lot of kids have. Our kids are struggling with depression right now too.
That's right. Or they might have gotten spooked. You know, they've gotten scared like a frightened pony, and you show them that page of division problems or something, and they freeze up.
It happens with all of ours at a certain point
Yeah.
in Algebra 1 and a certain point in Algebra 2,
Right.
even in high school, where they look at it and they say,
I don't
I can't do that, I
understand.
can't do it, I can't
I
do
know.
it. And you
Yeah.
say, yeah, you can. Come here, sit down, let's do it.
And that's just when you walk through it with them and you just kind of verbally take them by the hand and say, you can do
Okay,
this.
so I've had this conversation with ours a million times. I say, okay,
Right.
have a
Hmm.
seat. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to do this.
Hmm.
They freak out. I say, no, no, no,
Ah!
no, no, no. Don't freak out.
Right.
Don't freak out. Let me tell you a secret about algebra.
Hmm.
Algebra is all about developing a toolbox
Hmm.
of things you can do to problems.
Hmm.
And so you look at the problem, you say, is there one of my tools I can approach this problem with?
Hmm.
So, okay, can we simplify it? Simplify is one of our tools.
Right.
Is there anything we can do to simplify this? There is.
Yes.
And just walk them through it and help
Hmm.
them to see that they really can do it.
Hmm.
So that's one thing to do. And it may be too that your curriculum is requiring too much busy work. For example, if you're using a curriculum that's typically used in the schools,
Hmm.
no teacher in the schools assigns all of the work in the curriculum.
Unless they have to keep half the class sitting down and filling out worksheets while they work with the troubled
I
students.
think about one really popular curriculum, and it has
Yes.
a lot of written work.
Hmm.
But the way it's used in the classroom is they give all that written work
Hmm.
so that the teacher can assign some work for the whole class.
Hmm.
And then this kid who finishes early, she gives him some extra work so that he'll stay quiet and stay out of trouble. And so it may be that your curriculum is assigning more written work than is really necessary.
Hmm.
Now, how do you know if it's necessary? Well, you cut back on it and see if they're still getting it. And so you don't worry about that. Now, someone says, my biggest challenge is the war my 18-month-old wages when I sit down to teach my two older children, K and third. Okay, first of all, what you need is some toys that they can only play with during school time.
Hmm.
And they can't be noisy toys.
Yep.
Send the noisy toys to somewhere else. Also, sit down with the 18-month-old first. There's
Hmm.
something I like to say about teaching, about coping with balancing the needs of the olders and the youngers,
Hmm.
is that first attention is shortest.
Well, they've got a short attention span for anything except whining.
Yes.
And they can say, Mama, 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 all
Wait.
afternoon.
Let me finish
But Mama,
let me finish this lesson, honey. Wait. They can whine for
they
50
can do that.
minutes an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Without a break.
But if you get that
Mhm.
little one up in your lap before you get going, as soon as they come up and you say, okay, honey, let's do some toddler school. And you teach them a Bible verse or the ABCs, or you count their toes or whatever,
Yes.
then they run off
Mm-hmm.
because what they want is they just want to be a part of it all. But they have a very short attention span for anything but wanting. So if you give them that first attention, then they're
Yeah.
off to do something else. And and and
And how many toddlers have you had to juggle as you were teaching older kids?
well, we have 8 kids, so a
So
lot.
you had 7 toddlers you had to work with
Yes.
after you started homeschooling.
Yes. And some of them were very noisy, and some of them were very demanding.
Not all at the same time, but
No,
no.
we didn't have a litter. We had one at the top.
Yes.
But anyway, it is, if you give them that first bit of attention,
Mm.
then usually you can move on to the next, and then check whatever your big challenges are with your older kids. You can save those for nap time, and you can do that during nap time. Nap time will save your life. And there's no reason that your 18-month-old, you can't pull them up into your lap while you do school.
Mm-hmm.
Get them a quiet toy or a puzzle or something, get them up in your lap. A lot of times they don't want to be left out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it works.
Yep.
But I wish I had realized that the soft part of homeschooling, the relationship, the discipleship, the love of learning, the character development, that those would be the things that really mattered when our kids got grown. Because, if I miss teaching them something along the way, they can Google it. If some schools focus more on one area of history than another, it's going to be expected that they're not going to all be alike when they get to college or out in the workforce. But a kid with good character who loves to learn, who loves the Lord and loves his family, those aren't going to be the ones you're worried about when they're grown up.
And you know what? My observation is all kids love to learn if you don't kill it.
Right. So how can you teach them to love to learn? Well, surround them with books. Research has shown that someone with an 8th grade education who grew up in a house full of books has equivalent literacy to someone with a college degree who grew up in a home with few books. Surround them with books. Do some hands-on stuff. Take field trips once we're able to do that again. Stop and read aloud and get excited about what you're teaching.
Talk to your kids as if they might understand you. That you can look at them and say, "Oh, they're just 7 years old. They don't get that." No, but you can explain it to them like they were 7 years old, right? You can explain stuff that shows up in the news. Things that you see out in the community. You know so much as a grown up that they don't, and they don't have the exposure to it. And if you see something out there, say, "Hey, do you know why they do that? Do you know why that building is shaped that way? Or do you know why they keep animals in that sort of fence?" And anything that you see, you can talk about to them. I think you show them that the world is a very interesting place, and there's so much that they can learn about it if they just open their eyes and ask questions.
Well, I remember reading a book on architecture and reading about the different kinds of columns. And we were driving down the road, and I pointed out to I think I was our oldest child at the time, who was maybe 6.
Yeah.
That the difference between a Corinthian column and a Doric column. And I heard him like 15 years later.
You probably changed his life.
Explaining that to one of his younger siblings, and passing on that delight in, hey, I know something about the world and why it's the way it is. And so if you feel like a homeschool failure, first of all, you're probably not. But even if you are, you can start again tomorrow. And it's going to be all right. And your kids are not falling hopelessly behind. The whole world is struggling right now, and it's okay to recognize that. It's okay to recognize that the curriculum is not your master, you are its master. Use it to do what you need it to do.
Absolutely. So
we want to invite you to please join us at the Midwest Parent Educators Conference, which is going to be happening in just a couple of months.
In Harrisonville this year.
In Harrisonville, okay.
Yep.
and it's going to be so much fun. We're doing some of our favorite workshops.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about struggling learners in high school and college. We're going to be talking about how do you homeschool boys in a way that you and they enjoy it. We're going to talk about keep
Mm-hmm.
your boys safe on the internet
Right.
and from media and gaming, and how do we teach them to use that stuff in a balanced way.
We're going to be talking about why your middle schoolers are driving you crazy and what you can do about it.
And we're going to be talking about what gifted kids really need.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that you will join us.
Mm-hmm.
That we're looking forward to being there with you in Kansas City. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Mm.
So
Genevieve says some days, especially the character building days, seem so long. What are some ways that you as parents recharge and refresh yourselves during the school year?
I will tell you this.
Mm.
I hear moms say all the time, I need me time. I need me time. Let me tell you what you need. You need devotions.
Mm.
You need God time. I
Mm-hmm.
found out that it was critically important that I spend time in the Word of God first thing in the morning. And when I did, the days were better.
Mm-hmm.
And then also that that I gathered the kids and we spent time in the Word of God together as a family. And that's super important that we focus on what is the point of all this before we get going.
Mm-hmm.
And then nap time, like I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And lunchtime, once the kids got old enough to make lunch, the kids made lunch, and I took a little bit of time at lunch to kind of. I'm an introvert. I know that seems
Mm-hmm.
weird for somebody who speaks to thousands of people every year, but I am. And I found it was really good for me to spend that few minutes alone at lunch. And so the kids had
Well,
lunch on their own. I had lunch on my own.
I know that there were, you always heard people talking about, well, you need to spend, that quality time at
But I
meals,
just spent four
but
hours
yeah,
with
you just
them.
spent the whole morning with your kids.
Right.
It wasn't like you didn't see them all day or something.
But
Yeah.
I think the critical thing is spending time in the Word,
Mm-hmm.
because the Lord can recharge us in a way that no amount of self indulgence or rest or anything else will.
One thing that's helpful too is if you've got some people in your life that are mentors that are a few years ahead of you, because I think a lot of times the frustration and the anxiety that we feel is because we look at the chaos around us right now and we think it's always going to be this way unless it gets worse. And we don't realize, because we haven't been through that part of the road yet, that this is all temporary. And yeah, it's going to be
Well,
really busy for a time, and then it's not going to be busy in the same way.
I know it's been 9 years since we've had somebody in diapers, which is impossible to understand after spending 21 years with people in diapers, you know?
Well, and that's just like when we're
And
counseling our middle schoolers who are feeling like I've absolutely failed at school and I'm more stupid than I used to be and I'm going to get worse and worse and I'll never amount to anything. We can look back and say, you know what? This is just a phase you're going through. It's going to get better. Just be patient, give it a little bit of time. We need that advice too. We need somebody whose kids are older than ours to say, look, I know it's a lot that's on your plate right now, but it's not going to be that way forever.
yes,
It's going you're going to get better at
high
it.
school's way easier than middle school.
You are going to get better at the parenting and the management part of it, and the load is going to shift and it's not going to be this way forever. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's you got a handful right now when you've got a toddler and a nursing baby and a primary school. Yeah, that's busy. It was busy when your mama did it too,
Yeah.
and she survived it, and you're going to do just great. So yeah, we need that encouragement. So yeah, encourage you to look for some parents who are a little farther down the road that can give you the heads up like that.
Yeah, that get it.
Hmm.
Especially older homeschool parents can be a real help
Hmm.
to say, you know what? Yeah, we lived through that. It's all right. You're going to
Yeah.
live through it too.
So all right.
Okay. Anybody else got any more questions?
What other
Hurry
questions?
up.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you've got some questions, we are here and we would be glad to answer them.
Hmm.
Um, for us,
Hmm.
we have
Hmm.
we have 6 boys in a row.
Yeah, we had 6 boys first.
We're about to graduate our last boy, our
Right.
youngest, our baby.
Yeah.
And then we have 2 girls after that. So we're about to become an all girl child household, which
Except for me.
has
Except for
never
me.
happened Yes. And
That'll be a change.
in some years I
Mhm.
just feel like, man, we're just clocking along, we're doing a great job. And other years it just seems to be one stumble after another, but they've all turned out all right.
I think you had kind of a boot camp experience with that because she had really troublesome pregnancies. And when you have
I
eight
had
kids,
train wreck pregnancies.
when you have 8 kids, that meant like every 2 years there was a high risk pregnancy coming along. And so, like, some years you did all of the field trips and made all
Yeah.
of the projects, and then other years you couldn't do anything.
Yep.
And I think those were years where you grew in character and the kids grew in character, and everybody learned to
Yep.
pitch in around the house and all. And so, I think that was a good learning experience. Now looking back at it,
True. We've got some questions. What
yes.
state are you in? We're in North Carolina.
Oh, a state
And
of confusion, state of alarm.
state of dismay.
Yeah.
Um, if you could change one thing about your homeschool journey, what would it be? I think I would not have been as hard boiled and pushy with our oldest two kids. I was a
Mhm.
typical new scared homeschooler. I had great aspirations for them,
Mhm.
and I did give them a love of learning, and
Mhm.
they will tell you that. But I was kind of a stick in the mud, made sure that they did every last problem of every last lesson, and they struggled more in college, I think, because of burnout than our next kids did, which life intruded with them. We had a child who
Mhm.
had a life-threatening heart condition and had cancer, and I wasn't able
Mhm.
to I wasn't able to do the things I'd done with the older ones, and that was probably a good thing.
I think we didn't realize the way that their minds developed and some of
Yes.
the milestones there. So like we had a couple of really precocious kids and we thought, "Wow, let's just go as fast as they can go." And we didn't realize that there was a point where their brains just hadn't developed to do, say,
Yeah.
abstract reasoning, to do algebra.
Yeah.
And so
And so we just pushed ahead too
I think we
much.
pushed them
Yeah.
too hard at the start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody says,
Mm.
have you had any kids convinced they didn't want to go to college? And how did you keep them motivated to do the things they needed to keep their options open? We had one child who's a struggling learner,
Mm-hmm.
severely dyslexic, severely dysgraphic, and he was convinced he wasn't going to be able to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard to make sure that he had everything he needed to keep his options open. I think generally, when you're dealing with this, particularly with boys, they've lost hope. They don't think they're able. They've lost hope or they're burned out. And the answer to both of those is
Mm-hmm.
to move away from the busy work, to focus on the actual learning. If you have to do things orally, if
Mm-hmm.
you need to intervene and help them to learn better, do some things to learn better. We're going to talk about that at the conference,
Mm-hmm.
how to do that, how to get them up to speed in the areas that they're struggling. And and so I think you have to give them hope and you have to restore their love of learning. But you can restore their love of learning by looking at the things that they are interested in and finding a way for them to learn more about those things.
I think too, and particularly with boys, if you show them the practical application of what they're trying to learn, and so instead of giving them a lot of theoretical things or, here's a writing prompt that was in the book, instead give them a writing assignment that means something to them,
Right.
or
Yeah.
math problems that they can see a practical use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Also,
Hmm.
reality therapy helps if he's a teenager. You can say, okay, I
Hmm.
want you to be happy, and you've decided you want to go into whatever
Hmm.
job he thinks he wants to do. Well, let's develop a budget based on what you can make doing that.
Yeah,
And
and you don't have to play games about that.
no,
You're
just
just
help him just
just
help
walk him
him to
through it.
see the consequences of his decision and encourage him that he
Hmm.
does have what it takes. If what he'd really love to do, and there's nothing wrong with not going to college if that's not the direction you're headed, but
Right.
there's a lot of jobs you can't do unless you do go to college.
Hmm.
And if his real dream involves those, help him to see that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. What would you suggest for ages 8-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl, 5-year-old girl, 2.5-year-old boy, 7-month-old boy? Reading, spelling, math for the older two are 1-on-1 for the most part at this point. So I'm going through school with one kid at a time. It feels a bit chaotic at times. Juggling all the kids and their needs, interruptions for nursing, diaper changes. Thought I was trying to set the big three together at the table. It seems it wouldn't be very, very fruitful though. No, I think when you've got heavy on the young side,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to teach like Laura Ingalls Wilder in her one-room schoolhouse, where you give
Mm-hmm.
somebody something to do, something small, a bite-sized chunk, and you sit them down to do it while you work with the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can alternate with, okay, it's your playtime. Get the toddlers and build a train model or whatever, you know, and recognize that learning to deal with interruptions is a life skill. That it's not harming your kids' education.
Mm-hmm.
That there's toddlers coming and going, and they're getting interrupted, and things are getting interrupted. They're gonna have to deal with that all their lives.
And you realize too that with kids that close together, there's a lot of things you can do with the whole group. You know,
History,
you can read the
science,
history,
yeah.
you can do the science, you know, at that level. That's something you can all do at the same time. So,
And you are on the verge of some of those kids getting more independent. Your 8-year-old boy,
mm-hmm.
6-year-old girl are going to get a lot more independent in the next year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, they'll reduce that independence some when they hit those preteen years.
Yeah.
When their boy's about 11, it'll be a struggle again, but you're going to have a golden time for a year or two coming up.
Right.
And it will get easier. I wish somebody had said that when all of ours were little,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like everybody that saw me said, "Oh, you think it's hard now? Wait till they're teenagers." Oh no. Having teenagers was a breeze compared to having everybody little. Now, that depends on you maintaining a good relationship with them and discipling them through
Right.
those challenging preteen years. But yeah, it's going to get easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so, don't let it get to you, is what I'm saying. It's okay if it's chaotic. It's okay if you're just like juggling through the school day. It's all right. It's going to get easier. It's going to get better, and your kids are going to get it. Promise.
You know, I remember when I was in band in middle school, I remember having to miss a couple of classes for one reason or another, and the band director took me in his office during a recess one time and just went over the lesson with me. And in 20 minutes, he covered a week's worth of class. I said, "Is that all that was?" He said, "Yeah, that's really all that we covered in that week's worth of band class." And realizing that the reason that your child sits in a schoolroom for 6 or 7 hours a day doesn't is not a reflection of the amount of material that he's getting every day. And so the fact that your children, you know, maybe in 6 or 7 hours of the day, they may get interrupted a million different times and have a bunch of different stuff going on, but you can cover the same amount of material that they
Yes.
would have gotten if they were sitting in a classroom.
In just a few minutes.
So,
And that's kind of a surprise. We feel like, I must be cheating because I explained this math concept in 3 minutes instead of 35. But no,
you're
no.
not cheating. You're efficient.
Yes. Well, we had a son that went to Oxford University in England.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me after he'd been there a while, and he said, "Mom, this is like homeschooling college." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "We don't have classes and lectures." I said, "You don't?" He said, "No. We meet with the professor. He talks about what we need to know, and then he sends us to work in the library for a week." Why does the #1 university in the world do that?
Because it works.
Because it works, because the tutorial method is the most effective way to teach, and that's what you guys are doing. How we have been talking a long time, so we probably ought to go. Don't want to scare people to death they won't listen, so they won't click on the video.
Yeah.
But we are looking forward to seeing you in Kansas City.
Harrisonville.
Please come join us. Oh, Harrisonville, sorry.
Mm.
Please come join us there. Sign up, register.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see you. We got some exciting things to talk about, and we'll have our whole booth there, along with all the cool resources at raisingrealmen.com and our subscription box at craftsmancrate.com.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to love it. It's going to be so much fun. So we will see you there.
All right, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Everybody have a good...
Oh, we forgot to tell them about our podcast. You can find our podcast
Yes.
at halandmelanie.com/radio. All right.
Yes.
See you guys there.
Bye-bye now.
Bye now.